Water tonight, not wine. They think I am all appetite. I will make them think I am restraint. Clara will bring kindness like a blade. If she does not, the knife will be enough. The world likes a clean story. I am a painter. I will give them clarity. Rowan let the room hear the last line twice. If she does not, the knife will be enough. The storm made no noise. People did. Lydia's notebook scraped open as if pages could catch verdicts. Graham's jaw twitched like a clock spring. Anders whispered a prayer that had no words Rowan recognized. Miles stared at the speaker as if sheer hatred could reach back in time and remake breath. Evelyn walked to the canvas and touched, very lightly, the paint where her own mouth had been stitched. She did not look surprised, only tired. Clara closed her eyes, briefly, like someone who has heard a doctor say the name she already knew. He set us up, she said. Even my mercy. Rowan nodded. He built a story where any of you could be the villain, and he would still be the author, he said. He turned the air into ink. Graham found a brittle voice. Then we are absolved, he said too quickly. No, Evelyn said, eyes on Clara. We are named. Rowan turned off the screen. The gallery felt suddenly larger, emptier of his voice. Clara poisoned him, he said, as if reading minutes into a record. That is one truth. Another, a separate hand used the blackout to ensure his death would look like horror, not sleep. The gas was a third hand, panic or cleanup. 3 acts, possibly 2 authors, maybe 1. He looked at his notebook and repeated the sentence he'd written at 2:31. 2 hands can be the same person. Clara's laugh, dry, real, escaped. Now you want me to confess to a knife I didn't hold, she said. How hungry you are for coherence. Rowan didn't flinch. I want the person who turned your crime into spectacle, he said. Because that person tried to kill us in the kitchen to erase the mess. He faced the group. That wasn't Clara. Miles threw his hands. Then who? Rowan let the room answer for him. The canvas offered up its grotesque. Graham with burning papers, Lydia with her blade of words, Evelyn pouring, Anders faceless with keys, Miles hollowed by want. The painted Rowan's torch lit them all unkindly. Rowan walked to the knife sunburst frame in the foyer and laid his palm on the empty ray. The blade was taken hours before dinner, he said, by someone who knows where every light switch lives and which hinge squeaks because they oil it. Someone who can make a gas line hiss and a breaker sit down and a camera play dead. Someone who lives in the house the way blood lives in veins. Anders' cap twisted in his hands until it was a rope. Detective, he began and stopped, because he understood the sentence that was coming and could not convince his mouth to be faster than the truth. Rowan turned, not to Anders, past him, to the dining room, to the pantry door still cracked for the sake of air and bells and traps. He looked at the floor of the pantry, at the dragline of flour that had been a half moon at 12:23, at the crescent he knew by now as well as his own signature. It ended not at the dumbwaiter, not tonight. It ended at the outer door to the north stoop, the one with the tight weather seal and the scrape of a shoe the exact size of a man who hated to get his jacket wet. He followed it out into the covered maw of the stoop. Cold bit, the air cut clean. In the drift against the doorpost, a stub of cigar smoldered out, snow cooling what ash hadn't leapt to the sill. On the paint, the smear his penlight caught earlier. Flour. The same fine dust now pressed into the ridge of a fingerprint lower than his, Graham's height when he leaned out to flick an ash. Mr. Tate, Rowan called, without turning. Come see where your clean hands have been. Graham did not move. His voice came thin from the gallery. This is nonsense. Rowan walked back in, the cold still stitched to his coat. You signed his ruin, he said. You read the new will before dinner. You handled the letter opener. You adjusted spotlights to burn brighter on your client's humiliation. Anders saw you. You went to the hidden room to steal a word that hurt you and left my flower on your cuff. You pulled the fuse to make dark theater, and when poison and knife did not give you a clean story, You loosened the gas to take the rest of us with him because any case without witnesses is an acquittal. Graham stood very straight, which is what proud men do when they choose not to run. You think I would risk my life to tidy a narrative? Rowan didn't blink. I think you would risk our lives to keep your own story intact. And I think you misjudged how loud gas is to a house that listens. He pointed to the sheath. You used it and sent it down the dumbwaiter. You brought it back when you realized I had bells on my veins. You practiced tidy. Panic made you sloppy. Evelyn's voice came quiet, steady, the tone she used to tell patients things they would not like and would need to live with anyway. And you didn't smell the almond, she said. You smelled your cigar. You don't trust your senses, you trust the performance. For the first time, Graham's face showed something that wasn't disdain. It showed calculation losing to inevitability. Clara stood slowly. She looked at Rowan, then at Graham, then at the painting where Victor had written, "One will remain." If you want me to thank you, she told Graham, you are worse at people than at law. Lydia's pen moved at last. He'll claim he only meant to expose the truth, she said, almost tender. They always do. Miles' voice from low. You stabbed him, he said to Graham. You, after? Graham's answer was a narrow kind of honesty. After, he said, after your mother failed to finish the job she started. He didn't look at Clara. I thought I was saving her from the indignity of poison. I thought I was saving everyone from Victor's last cruelty, his theater. I gave him an ending worthy of the villain he insisted upon being. By trying to murder the rest of us too, Lydia said. Graham's throat worked. That was later. Rowan let the house hear the word later. 2 hands, he said softly, almost to himself. Same person after all. Clara looked at Rowan like a woman who had already calculated the second sentence that follows the first in any courtroom. Do you want my wrists now, detective? She asked, dry. You'll need his too. Rowan nodded once. Yes. The storm shrugged its last weight off the roof as if it had only been waiting for someone to say the line. Somewhere on the road below, a plow coughed its progress like a promise that other uniforms would arrive. The wrong clock in the hall kept right time. Rowan took the vial, the sheath, the thumb drive, the microSD, and the bracelet, and placed them in one bag together because sometimes you put all your truths in one pocket so they cannot be argued with separately. Sit, he said again, not loud, not cruel, final. We'll wait for the morning. Graham sat because he had begun to understand that this was a room where even men like him did what they were told when the story had closed around them. Clara sat because she had chosen this. Evelyn sat because doctors sit with endings. Lydia sat because witnesses do. Miles sat because his legs had forgotten how to be anything else. Anders sat because the house had finally exhaled. Rowan stood, torch without fire, and watched the light thin itself into day. Part 10. Morning takes attendance. Dawn did not break so much as seep, gray first, then the faintest wash of color in the snowfield beyond the glass. The storm quit without apology. In the gallery, the faces on the walls lost their candle snarl and settled into paint again. Rowan Hale stood with the evidence bag in his hand and listened to the house take its first honest breath in hours. Down the hill, a plow coughed, backed, coughed again. Metal met ice with civic patience. Anders's shoulders loosened at the sound the way men do when they know help now belongs to the world and not to them alone. Coffee, Rowan said at last. Now we can. Anders moved, grateful to be given something that wasn't dread. Evelyn followed to watch the flame in the valve and all the ways morning could be kind. Rowan kept the others in the gallery, the unveiled canvas watching like a courtroom sketch made cruel. Miles sat small in a chair that had seemed built for larger men. Lydia perched on the windowsill, notebook open but still. Clara stood, because sitting would have suggested fatigue. Graham stood too, because pride is taller than furniture. The first trooper arrived with a chapped face and a clean pad, the second with a wind-reddened nose and a practice scan. They took the room in, then took Rowan's short, orderly account as if it were a ladder they could climb without looking down. When he handed over the evidence bag, vial, sheath, micro SD, thumb drive, bracelet, the younger trooper's posture changed by a degree that meant we are done guessing. Lab couriers en route, the older said. Roads are passable now, couple hours tops. He looked at Graham, at Clara, then back to Rowan. You want cuffs? Not yet, Rowan said. They're going to sit here and remember how to tell the truth. The troopers nodded. They had seen rooms finish the work before the jail did. Statements in daylight. They began at the dining table, not because it was comfortable, but because the linen still carried the ghost of last night, and the names wanted that witness. Clara went first. Daylight did not diminish what night had made. If anything, the truth sat better on her in the morning. Rowan asked the same questions he had asked at 3 a.m., but this time he asked them for ink and chain of custody. Clara answered without embroidery. She described the dose, the careful measure, the chosen glass, the timing. She named the corridor she had sworn never to use. She did not cry. She did not perform. When Rowan asked if she understood what a jury would need, she said, I understand a public that prefers theater to mercy. Lydia's pen scratched like rain. Graham spoke next. He requested counsel. He got a trooper's recorder and Rowan's stare instead. He admitted to opening the new will before dinner, for professional reasons. He denied moving the camera. I would not know how. He blinked when Rowan explained that a breaker does not require genius, only motive. He admitted to pulling the fuse. After the poison had already made the act unsightly, I sought clarity. He chose the word clarity as if it were exculpatory. He denied loosening the gas line, then recanted in the same breath when Anders's quiet "sir" arrived like a nail. I panicked, Graham said. You were all. He gestured at the house, the painting, the morning. It was too messy. The recorder did not look up. It ate the words without comment. Miles followed because he asked to. He confessed nothing but anger and debts. He apologized to the room and to a man who wouldn't hear it and to a woman who had not asked. He put his head in his hands once and then didn't do it again. When he was done, the younger trooper set a paper cup of coffee by his elbow, and Miles said, "Thank you," like a boy in trouble remembering how to be raised. Lydia gave a statement that read like notes for an essay she would never publish. Facts, angles, the smell of cigar, the texture of silk, the way the gallery changes people into their idea of who they are. She did not flatter herself with innocence. I lifted the shroud, yes, she said, because curiosity is my vice and my trade. She said the sentence in a way that made even the trooper stop writing to hear it. Evelyn's statement was surgical. She listed times, doses she did not administer, anomalies she noticed, and the words people chose when they thought they were being careful. He drank water to send a message, she said. So did she. She nodded once toward Clara. So did he. She looked at Graham without heat. Messages kill more people than chemistry. Anders's statement was a map of the house. Breakers, valves, half-inch on a hinge, where the floor dips near the hidden door. He apologized for the wire brush as if it were a sin. He mentioned the cigar on the north stoop, and the older trooper's pen wrote harder for that line. He ended by saying, "I'm sorry for the noise this house made." Rowan said, "It was useful noise," and Anders nodded like a man giving back a piece of his pride in a small envelope. The journals speak. When the courier left with the vial, Rowan took Victor's thumb drive and micro SD to the study desktop. The troopers hovered in the doorway with legal patience. Clara stood behind Rowan with arms crossed that did not entirely hide a shiver. The drive held more than last week. It held a folder named Year of Truth, and inside it, months of audio. Victor dictating like a man who had discovered confession as a new medium. There were entries on collecting, on legacy, on the craft of hurt. One line hit the air and would not leave. They think truth is what you speak, Victor said in spring. Truth is placement. Put the right object beside the right man and watch him name himself. Rowan played the micro SD files again for the troopers. Lydia listened with her eyes closed as if to separate the voice from the man. Miles stared at his shoes. Graham stared at the wall. Evelyn took Clara's hand once, briefly, and let go with the same brevity, like a post check you give to a stranger and remember later. The arrests. The call came back fast because the roads were clear now, and because a judge was awake, and because men with mourning on their faces like to deliver answers. Prelim positive, the older trooper said, phone tucked to shoulder. Cyanide, concentration high. Clara nodded once and looked at the window, where the snow had gone from fury to museum. Good, she said, and it was not approval. It was category. The troopers conferred, then turned to Rowan. Your call, detective, the older said, meaning how do you want it to look? Rowan looked at Graham first. You will stand, he said. Graham stood. You will put your hands behind your back. He did. The cuffs clicked in a way old houses recognize. The younger trooper read the words the Constitution demands. Graham listened as if he were already editing the transcript in his head. Rowan turned to Clara. He did not ask her to stand. She already had. You will come with us, he said. Quietly, she nodded. She turned briefly to Miles. His mouth open. No words arrived that would make sense of any of it. She touched his cheek, a gesture not of absolution but of inventory, as if counting one last thing she would not be allowed to own. The cuffs on her wrists looked wrong and correct in the same moment. No one applauded. Daylight does not applaud. The lodge exhales. By late morning, the house had new sounds: boots on entry tile, radio murmurs, the slap of evidence tape, the careful lift of the bone-handled fox knife from its absence into a form with a number on it. The nice path would be graphed later. Its story had already been told. Rowan gave the troopers the map of the traps and what they caught. He left the flower crescents and the charcoal dust for photographs. He let the gallery keep its last dignity, the canvas uncovered, the word liar still legible, the torch in his painted hand lighting faces he now knew too well. And then he sent the others to their rooms to pack. Miles went first, stuffing clothes into a bag he hadn't earned and a shirt he would learn to wash himself. He stopped in the doorway, turned, and said to Rowan, "Thank you," like people do when thanks is the only rope left. Lydia closed her notebook on a sentence she would not read to anyone. "I'll write nothing," she told Rowan. "Not because I don't want to, but because I can't afford to flatter Victor with publication." She smiled a little. "I will think about Flower, though. It's wonderfully unromantic." Evelyn gathered the journals in a banker's box as if they were a patient she had been assigned late in the shift. "I'll call you when I've read them," she told Rowan. "Not to gossip, to correct." He nodded. Medicine and detection share appetites. Anders took his toolbox in both hands. He looked at the lodge like a man who loves a horse that has thrown him and is deciding whether to get back up. "You'll need a locksmith for the front," he said. "2 teeth gone on the lower cylinder." He hesitated. "If Mrs. Harland, if she can't keep the house, tell them to give me first chance at the trees." Rowan said he would. The troopers escorted Clara and Graham down the steps. Cameras would come later. For now it was just boots and breath and the cold honesty of noon. Clara did not look back. Graham did and wished he hadn't. The gallery's window held his reflection too small to win the argument. The quiet after. By afternoon, the lodge calmed. Heat settled into the radiators. The regulator clock ticked the right seconds without being asked. The wind changed to a clean breeze that spoke of plows and salted roads and dinners that were not elegies. Rowan walked the house one last time. In the study, he locked the small drawer Clara's key had opened and slid the key into an envelope with her name on it. He left it with a trooper because sometimes courtesy is the only control left in the day. In the gallery, he stood before the canvas and looked at the painted Rowan's torch until his own eyes watered. "Not prophecy," he said to Victor and to himself. "Just placement." In the dining room, he touched the table where the flower had long since been brushed away by duty and evidence tape. He picked up the bracelet from the bag, one last look, and wondered what it had weighed the first time Clara decided to lie about it. He put it back. In the foyer, he faced the knife sunburst with its new absence. The empty raid looked less like lost now and more like a place truth had stood for a minute before leaving. Houses remember that, people too. He met Evelyn on the stairs as she came down with a journal strapped in twine. "Rowan," she said, in the voice doctors use when they've decided what the prognosis is, and it doesn't change whether they smile. "When mercy learns theater, it stops being mercy." He nodded. She added, almost kind, "You did well to separate them." "Did I?" he asked, and didn't ask who for. "For the living," she said. "It's all we get." The road. Outside, the afternoon had the clean, blinding quality of snow after violence. Everything reflective, everything pretending at innocence. Rowan stepped into it and felt the cold decide his lungs. He looked back once at the lodge, brand new to the eye, spotless, every line rectilinear, every window an advertisement for transparency. Inside, a painting with the word liars hung true. He started down the clear drive, boots crisp in salt. The trooper car idled by the gate. He would file, he would testify, he would listen to the lab speak chemistry and the judge speak procedure. He would sleep at some point and dream of bells that rang once and a flower that told the truth because it didn't care who heard it. Halfway down, his phone buzzed. A text from an unfamiliar number. "Rowan, when you finished with their stories, come to the hospital. There's a diagnosis here that belongs to you." He looked back at the house a final time and let the wind take the last of the night's theater off his coat. "Soon," he said, to the text and to the road and to the story that was technically over and never would be. He kept walking. The day kept its promise to be ordinary, which is all any ending can do right. Part 11, The Trial of Truth. The courthouse smelled nothing like the lodge. No wood smoke, no paint, no wet wool drying by a fire. Just polished oak, coffee, and the nervous paper sound of lawyers arranging their lives in folders. Rowan Hale sat 3 rows back, coat folded on his knees, listening to the theater Victor Harland had scripted without needing to be alive for the performance. Clara on the stand. Clara Harland took the oath as if it were jewelry she hadn't chosen to wear. Her pearls gleamed like an echo of the night she had ended. The prosecutor asked, "Did you prepare a substance intended to kill Victor Harland?" Clara answered, "Yes." The courtroom rustled. Truth rarely arrives unclothed. She explained the dose, the glass, the timing. "I meant to stop him," she said. "I meant to deny him his theater. He built a life out of other people's humiliations. I offered him quiet." Her lawyer shifted as if the word quiet could be redefined into mercy. The defense for Graham pounced. "And yet he did not die quiet," they said. "Someone else's hand turned your crime into cruelty." "Yes," Clara said, "because Graham Tate never learned how to stop performing for himself." Graham's denial. Graham Tate in the dock was a study in poise that cracked only when forced. He denied the knife, then admitted it in increments. He denied the fuse, then blamed panic. He denied the gas, then claimed maintenance. Every denial came with the posture of a man who believes articulation is absolution. The jury watched his hands. Rowan did too. They were clean that morning, but he remembered flour on cuff, soot on skin, fingerprints lower than pride would have preferred. He remembered Anders's whisper, "Sir?" Witnesses. Miles Harland testified with grief and spite braided together. "She killed my father," he said, pointing to Clara. "And he," a finger toward Graham, "made sure it hurt." He broke once in mid-sentence, sat down, and would not speak again. Lydia Voss read from her notebook as if it were scripture. She described flower crescents, bells, the way the gallery lit truth like a stage. "Victor wanted a finale," she said. "He got a farce. The guilty are the ones who thought they were improving the script." Evelyn Shore gave times, symptoms, chemistry. "Cyanide," she said without tremor. "Fast enough to end a body, slow enough to make theater if you add light and shadow." She did not look at Clara when she said mercy. She did not look at Graham when she said cruelty. She looked only at the jury, as if treating a ward that had asked for prognosis. Anders Hope mapped the lodge for the record, his voice steady. Breakers, valves, doors that whispered, doors that shouted. He ended with, "I should have oiled the hinge better." The gallery laughed once, wrongly, and was hushed. The verdict. After 4 days, the jury filed back. Clara Harland, guilty of voluntary manslaughter. Graham Tate, guilty of second-degree murder, guilty of attempted homicide for the gas line. Clara bowed her head once, as if relieved of a secret. Graham stiffened like a man who could not comprehend an ending he did not draft. The judge spoke of sentencing. Rowan did not write those words down. They belonged to another ledger. Aftermath. Outside, the air was spring cold and honest. Miles walked without speaking, Lydia beside him with her notebook closed for once. Evelyn nodded to Rowan across the steps. She would send him a page when she had read Victor's journals fully. Anders waited near the curb with a toolbox. He had mended something while they judged. Rowan lit a cigarette he would not finish. He thought of the gallery, the flower, the bells. He thought of Victor's words, "Placement is truth." And he thought, for the first time in months, that maybe placement could be mercy too, placing truth in the hands of people who could live with it. The courthouse clock struck noon. The sound was clean, ordinary. No bells hidden, no flower to betray. Just a clock keeping time. Rowan exhaled and walked into daylight that had no paintings in it. Part 12, Epilogue, The Quiet Frame. The trial was over. Clara Harland and Graham Tate were names on sentences now, not just suspects in Rowan Hale's notebook. The courthouse echoes had died, the journalists gone on to fresher tragedies, and the gallery's paintings sat under cloth again, waiting for dust. Rowan stayed in the city for a week, long enough to file, testify, and hand over what he could not carry forever. Then he took the road north again, not because duty called him back, but because unfinished places gnaw at men who make their trade in truth. The lodge in spring. The snow had melted down into a river's worth of silence. The lodge stood immaculate, as though nothing had ever happened within its walls. To the realtor's pamphlet it was still brand new, glass bright, beams sturdy, floors unsullied. But Rowan knew the truth. Houses remember. Inside, the air smelled of polish and emptiness. Evidence tape was gone, but faint outlines of it remained like tan lines on furniture. The gallery was shuttered, canvases veiled. He did not uncover them. He had no appetite for ghosts that had already told their stories. He walked the corridors, slow. His shoes whispered over flour long since scrubbed, over charcoal smears wiped clean, over hinges Anders had oiled at last. No bells hung on threads, no traps waited, only silence. Placement. In the study, he sat at Victor's desk. The small drawer was locked again. Clara's brass key still weighed on him. He had kept it in his pocket even after the court. He set it on the desk, turned it once, and listened to the click. Inside, nothing new. No letters, no fresh confessions. Just absence, which is its own form of presence. Victor had said placement was truth. Rowan thought of the flower crescent that had caught Graham, of the bell thread Clara couldn't resist, of the water glass that carried more mercy than poison. Placement had revealed all of them in time. But it had also revealed him, painted in torchlight, forced into theater by a man long dead. He wondered if placement could ever be gentle. If there was a way to put people beside one another, not to expose their lies, but to remind them of their worth. The survivors. He saw each of them in memory, as if they still occupied their chairs. Miles, bruised by inheritance, walking toward adulthood like a man dragging chains he hadn't earned. Lydia, notebook shut, finally deciding silence was sometimes sharper than words. Evelyn, carrying Victor's journals not as artifacts but as diagnoses. Anders, tender with locks and trees, trying to love a house that had bitten him. They lived. That was placement too. Survivors beside one another in a story that hadn't needed all their blood to finish. The torch. Before he left, Rowan went once more to the gallery. He did not uncover his painted double. He only stood in front of the veiled canvas and felt the shape beneath. Torch lifted, words scrawled, prophecy dared. One will remain, Victor had written. Rowan breathed. More than one did. He left the torch behind, painted, unlit. His own was smaller, a notebook with the word liars on its first page, and empty lines waiting to be filled. The road out. The drive wound down through thawing trees, past meltwater that gleamed like veins. The lodge disappeared behind him, swallowed by budding green. At a crossroads, Rowan stopped, window down, listening. Not for bells or hinges or gas hiss, just for wind and branches, the ordinary sound of a world without theater. He tapped ash into gravel, closed the notebook, and drove on. The truth was finished. The story wasn't.